Hello fellow Titan Quest fans! We got an unexpected early update for the monthly blog post on the Titan Quest 2 Steam page. This time again, it's a quick build presentation of quite an interesting combo build. First, the devs mention the THQ Nordic digital showcase and that they will announce a release date for Titan Quest 2. They probably mean the early access and not the full version. I would welcome to have a fixed release date finally and not sit on hot coals all the time, expecting the game release any second now. With that out of the way, let's get into the build. We get an interesting one this time. A combination of Earth and Storm Mastery forming the Elementalist class. This was also a caster staple in Titan Quest 1, where this mastery combination also had the same class name Elementalist. The build idea is to zap in, freeze all mobs and then channel a powerful earthquake to blow everything up. Sounds super spicy. This build is a combination of certain skills, each with distinctive modifiers to fine-tune each ability so that it does exactly what is needed. By the way, we saw all the spells presented here already in the demo version, with one exception, the ability Blink of Storm Mastery. I love the ability by the looks of it, and it's awesome that Storm has a nice lightning dash ability. So the idea is to crash in with Blink. The ability has no cost, which is unheard of in ARPG standards, and which was also unprecedented in the base game of Titan Quest 1. Blink here was skilled up to level 7, and that opens up a bunch of capacity points which are to be filled. The base ability just teleports to a target location, with the cold explosion modifier that deals cold damage at the start and end in an area of effect. The other modifier is also AoE, namely Thunder Crash, which makes you crash down from the sky instead of teleporting like the ability normally would. This modifier deals strike damage. The ability is only used to get into a mob fast and dealing ice and strike damage along the way. Once the player got in, the next step is to survive in the center of the mobs. For that, the ability Ice Nova is used. We know that one very well from the demo and previous showcases. This ability is skilled up to level 5, but it's enough to do its job, which is to freeze enemies in order to prevent them from clobbering the player to death. The ability deals a bunch of cold damage and has a 100% chance to freeze for 3 seconds, which is a long time in an ARPG. The modifier Flash Freeze is used. That one takes 2 capacity points per skill. It always freezes, even enemies that have built-in resistances against being frozen, and most important of all, it adds 2 seconds of freeze duration. These 2 upsides also have the massive downside of a huge addition to the spell's cooldown of plus 10 seconds, which sounds insanely high. Freezing a whole bunch of enemies in your closest proximity is only a setup for the main damage, and that would be the Earthquake ability. I tested that one in the demo, it was super powerful, but you also needed some channeling time. Freezing enemies gives you just that, and even a mage hero with very light armor and HP can work with that. Earthquake by default just has one stage and deals strike damage after release. With the modifier Extended Charge, another maximum stage is added, so you can charge it up to 3 levels. This modifier also adds Overwhelm to the spell. Each level gains 1 Overwhelm. This is a keyword that I saw a lot in the demo, especially in Warfare Mastery. A basic attack generates 1 Overwhelm charge, and it goes up to 3. There are some abilities like the Stomp ability of Warfare that has modifiers that say consumes Overwhelm for additional damage. So, the idea is that you hit 3 enemies with basic attacks, build up 3 Overwhelm charges that way, and then use the ability for huge damage, consuming the Overwhelm. In this case it's different. The Overwhelm gain is apparently done by just channeling the Earthquake spell for a maximum level of 3. The next modifier, Heavy Impact, synergizes very well with that, because the damage is increased by 21% per Overwhelm. That means charging the Earthquake fully means 63 additional damage. This blows away most small fry. For everything that survived, the build also has something up its sleeve. The devlog calls this step Clean Up. We see another well-known spell called Fissure. As explained in previous videos, it's a spell that deals strike damage. It has a nice modifier called Overwhelm. This synergizes well with the Earthquake ability. This one builds up Overwhelm during channeling. After blowing up the Earthquake, everything that is left standing gets blown apart by fissures that consume the built-up Overwhelm. This results in 2 additional fissures. There's also another modifier that also adds another fissure by default. That's a lot of fissures. The last modifier, Shockwave, also synergizes with Earthquake, because Shockwave deals additional damage to enemies that have been stunned. The Earthquake also has a chance to stun apparently. That is some strong synergy right here. The build already has a ton of active abilities, and it is not even done yet. There's more, namely the also well-known skill Ice Shards. The modifier's Torrent increases the number of ice shards per cast. The Frost Explosion deals additional damage to frozen enemies, synergizing well with Frost Nova. Projectile Penetration is obvious. It is skilled up to 2, which makes the Ice Shard projectile penetrate 2 targets. That's nice and intuitive. The damage seems a bit all over the place, right? Cold damage, strike damage. You might think those two don't go well with one another. Wrong, in this game you can make it work. Apparently, for this build, the attributes are split between Might, Knowledge and Vigor, as it is later described in the devlog. Vigor boosts the hero's defenses. Both Might and Knowledge increase the secondary attribute called Resolve, and Resolve scales your thermic damage, which is ice and fire damage. The attribute Might increases the secondary stat Fitness, which in turn scales physical damage, which is strike and pierce damage. That means this build is kind of a hybrid, because attribute points allocated in Knowledge, the intelligence stat, don't scale your physical damage. If the build had put all the points in Might, both secondary attributes that are relevant here would scale the damage of every ability used. The problem is, if you have a brute hero only with points in Might and Vigor, you probably won't be able to equip gear for mages, such as staves. I pondered for some time about the attribute system and damage scaling system in this game, but now it becomes a bit clearer what we can expect. It seems to be a very interesting and complex system that requires the player to plan a bit ahead. Where do you want to take your build? What armor types and weapons are you going for? Every piece of gear has stat requirements, so a little bit of planning is really necessary here. For that, it helps to understand the game's damage scaling mechanics. Coming back to the Earthquake combo build presented in the devlog. The build has so many active abilities, and all of those consume energy to use. To make up for it, the build uses a nice passive called Arcane Abundance from Earth Mastery with the feat Regen. This increases your energy and energy regeneration. Storm Mastery has a counterpart of this passive, which does a similar thing. This passive is called Arcane Influx. It does the exact same thing, but just the other way around. Here the ability itself does mana regen and the modifier adds additional energy. Seems kind of cool, because these two passive enable spammer builds such as this one. Scaling the damage just with attributes, as explained earlier, is not enough. There are some passives to increase the spell damage. The first one is from Earth Mastery again, called Grand Magic. This one seems to be super important because it is skilled to the max. The spell damage is increased drastically, as well as the crit chance of spells a little bit too. Yes, spells can crit in this game apparently. I think that's awesome, and I have seen that a long time ago in Dungeon Siege 2, if I'm not mistaken. For additional spell damage, Storm Mastery also has a counterpart called Raging Mind, which unlocks Spell Rage. Rage is a known keyword of the demo version. There were some skills or basic attack modifiers that make you build up rage on attack. Here, this passive ability does just that, just with casting spells. Each stack of rage increases the spell damage and cast speed by 1% per stack. The passive also increases the spell damage by default, and to top it all off, it has the modifier that increases the ailment chance. As explained in a previous video, everything has a chance to deal damage over time in this game. Normal weapon attacks and even spells. There seems to be no flat damage over time damage anymore. Ailment is a key name for damage over time, apparently. Spells can also deal damage over time now. So that means fire damage has a chance to deal burn damage, etc. Wow, that's a lot to take in. The build is kind of a mage that goes in a lot. In the fighting footage, the player also takes a couple of heavy hits. There's another huge change that we already saw in the demo. Not only can you dodge to evade enemy attacks by pressing spacebar, you can also activate a barrier shield for a brief period by pressing Q. This mitigates some damage. The build also relies heavily on that barrier ability, because the next passive increases the barrier by a lot. It is called Storm Protection, which throws around some keywords like barrier conversion rate and barrier decay rate, which I'm not sure yet what to make of it. The early access will give me enough time to figure that out. This build shows that you can pull off some crazy builds. A mage that goes in and spams abilities left and right, being kind of a hybrid, if we remember the stat point allocation. For the build that we saw in the previous devlog, the Ash Stalker crit build, we sadly didn't have much information about the skill point allocation. For this week it was a nice change. Now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, is this build up your alley, or do you prefer more like a sword and shield build? Whatever might be the case, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.